May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio Podcast. I'm DC Poobah of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives, coming to you from Sleepy Sanur with Dogga Bandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable and not suffering any economic hardship and free to get out and do whatever you wish within the confines of do as little harm as possible. Today's podcast will be about Della Goertz. I'm in the process of working on 3 different podcasts where I actually speak with people and where they talk, phone chats, I call them. But all 3 of them are incomplete, and I'm going to go back and get more from the people. So, there's a lot of material on Cuke.com. I basically put everything I've got on Cuke.com. I don't want to have archives, I just want to get it all there. And then to preserve it, it can be printed up. That's true. It'd be good to print it all up, get it organized, maybe a little better, and decide what to print up. Most things, I think, on acid-free paper. That's what I've always heard. I don't know anything about paper, but acid-free paper. And, get it in some libraries in different places. It'd be a number of volumes. It would have to be a project of a university or something. It's too big a deal for me. But that should be done. We cannot depend on digital information. It could all be wiped out by a sunspurt, whatever they call them, or any number of. We don't know what can happen, and digital information degrades, and but so will the paper. To me, what I call archiving is keeping everything, preserving things just a little bit longer. My intention right now is to make this podcast and not go over it like I always do. Now, when I'm reading a chapter in Crooked Cucumber, I go over that very carefully, make it sound good, and take out any uhs and stuff. But I also go over what I say in the phone chats and other things a little less carefully. But I've got stuff to do. I got to move on, and I just want to try making this podcast and not going over it, just being careful what I say. So it's going to be a little different, I would say, because I know I mispronounce things and say the wrong words and stuff frequently, normally, or I'll say something I won't like the way I say it, and I'll start it all over again. So we'll see what'll happen. You'll get a little taste of how it's actually going down. So before I get into Della Goertz, we're going to have pause to meditate. So when you hear the bell, hit pause, and you are free to meditate or not meditate for as long as you wish. And when you're ready to come back, hit unpause, and we'll hit the bell to end meditation, and then we'll go right into the podcast, the heart of the podcast on Della Goertz. So, Della Goertz was one of Shunryu Suzuki's very first students. She met Suzuki at a class at the American Academy of Asian Studies. Right after he came, Kazumitsu Kato, who she called Kaz, was he'd been running Sokoji since the prior priest Tobase left. For a year and a half, he'd been taking care of things, the services and this and that, and he was pretty young, and he was a graduate student at Berkeley, and I was so happy when Shunryu Suzuki arrived. He picked him up at the airport, and he introduced him to people. He knew Alan Watts. He knew everybody. Wonderful guy. He's still going. He's in his 90s. Maybe he's just 90, and he's down in Pasadena. And he's been involved with Zen Shuji, the Soto Zen Temple in Los Angeles, for years. And we'll get more about Kaz later in another podcast, or you can go to Cuke.com and search for Kazemitsu Kato. Anyway, Kato took Suzuki, I'd say a week or two or something after he'd arrived, to join him at one of his classes at the American Academy of Asian Studies. That went on to become the California Institute of Integral Studies, which is still going. And there were 3 women at that class: Della Goertz, Betty Warren, and Jean Ross. And I'm going to do 3 of these podcasts about them, one on each of them. Katrinka suggested I call the ones for people who have gone beyond, gone but not forgotten podcasts. So that's good. Anyway, there's probably descriptions of all that in what I'm going to read. So I'm just going to start reading things from Cuke.com. And actually, the first thing I'm going to look at here is on the San Francisco Zen Center memorial page, the Great Leap, Asanga Memorial Site, and very incomplete, but it's got some nice, people listed here who've gone beyond, pretty key people, and just has a little bit on them. Della Goertz has a nice picture of her from the early days at Zen Center, and it says, Zendo Te Jun Daishi. Zendo Te Jun Daishi. I remember that. She had 6 characters in her name. That's very unusual. Usually there's 4. I can't think of any exception to that. I'm sure there are, but right now I can't. Zendo Te, Zenwei Faith, and Jundaishi, Refined Naturalness. I would imagine that's a translation that Shunryu Suzuki gave her, told her that it meant. But there's people around who could have come. I can't tell right now. And she was born July 11th, 1913. Yeah, that's a year before my mother. And died on February 5th, 2012. And it says Della, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother was 99 and 1/2. She was one of Suzuki Roshi's early students at Sokochi Temple in San Francisco and lived in Zen Center's 340 Page Street building for many years. And then it just has an excerpt of a letter she wrote on Shunryu Suzuki. That's on Cuke.com, so I'll be reading the whole thing. I'm going to go straight to another thing that's from the Zen Center. It's very nice. Barbara Lubansky did an interview with Della. There'll be a link on Cuke.com on Della Goertz's page. If you want to get to it, just go to Cuke.com. Write Della, D-E-L-L-A, in the site search box, and then go to the one that comes up that says Della Goertz linked page, or I think that's what it says. So let's see if I have a date. I think this is 1992. Yeah, this is from a 1992 Windbell, volume 26, number 2. It isn't linked to from her page now. I didn't see it. So but this Windbell is on Cuke.com, but it's just I'm going to take the article out, and so you can just go straight to the article and link to it. But I'm going to wait till after I read this. So, Della Goertz, Learning and Staying Young by Barbara Lubansky Wenger. This year, Della Goertz, one of Suzuki Roshi's first American students, turns 80. We would like to offer congratulations and sing her praises, expressing our deep appreciation for her loving example of Buddhism. Thanks to Betty Warren, Pat Phelan, and Bill Kwong for their help in preparing this article. This is a quote now. Zen as a way of life teaches all the things I wanted to be. Genuine, kind, and grateful. The most wonderful thing is that it's up to you. There isn't a lot of telling you what to do. At first, I thought I must not be worthy, but then I knew there was no inferiority or superiority in Zen. The teaching is in what you do. So says Zendote Jundaishi Della Goertz, a Zen Center pioneer and practitioner since 1959. Genuine, kind, and grateful are only some of the virtues that Della personifies. Her life has also been one of teaching and learning. She was a primary school teacher for 30 years. During that time, she continued to take classes in the evenings and summer months. She became interested in comparative religion, and this led her to the Academy of Asian Studies, founded by Alan Watts. No, I don't think it was founded by Alan Watts. I want to make a note on that. See, and here's what I do when I do that. I look and see what point we're at. Oh, we're at about, here, I'm going to change the way I look at this so I can see. Well, that was about 12 and a half minutes. 12 and a half minutes. Founder, C-I-A-A-S. I forget the guy's name who founded it, but we'll see if I'm right or whatever. All right. It was one of these classes on a spring night in 1959 that Della met Suzuki Roshi. He was invited to the class to talk about Zen meditation. Actually, pardon me, but that's not quite right either. He was just invited to the class, and he was more like an observer. And at the end, Kaz said, "Would you like to say something?" I think we'll get to what he said. Well, I think he just said, let's do zazen, and then he got them all sitting on the floor. There were no cushions or nothing, and it was just a floor. And this is a little weird for Japanese because in Japan, a floor, a clean floor, is one where you go barefooted and, no shoes are on it. If shoes are going on the floor and everything, it's dirty. And then to sit on that. Anyway, he was making adjustments. He was in America, so he just had him sit on the floor and face the wall. And, they did 10 minutes of zazen or something. And that was revolutionary back then. So recently arrived from Japan, he was leading the congregation of Sokoji Temple in Japantown. Suzuki Roshi instructed us in Buddhist meditation that very night. He was such a wonderful person. We all wished to see him again and practice with him. He told us where his temple was and what time we should come to sit, 5:45 a.m. Yeah, Suzuki back then, he would say, people would ask him about Zen and koans and this and that. He'd say, I practice zazen in the morning. You're welcome to join me. Classmates Betty Warren and Jean Ross joined Della for sitting at Sokoji after that. Ananda Dallenberg was also sitting with Suzuki Roshi. That's not true either. Ananda came several years later. Pardon me, Barbara. And together they formed a core group of beginning students. Ananda had, and he was Claude then. I used the name Claude until he didn't start to call himself Ananda until after Shunryu Suzuki died, so after 1972. So if I'm back there, I call him Claude. He had been involved with Sokoji before this, with Tobase. Claude came he followed Alan Watts from Chicago to San Francisco, and I don't know, Alan Watts came in 49. That's when Claude met him and started studying with him. Watts came in the 50s sometimes. It's sometime mid-50s, maybe, I'm not sure. And Claude followed him. And Claude ended up being like the janitor at the American Academy of Asian Studies. I don't think he had to be that either. But, and he was a character back then. He is a very important character. Like everyone else, this is a quote, like everyone else, when we met Suzuki Roshi, we wanted to be his students. We didn't want any other teacher, and he liked us. That was it. He had faith in us, and we had faith in him. Yeah, Della had a way of saying, Della was a very simple, straightforward person, or that was the way she came across. But she, everything she said was sort of a pithy encapsulation of some really fundamental truth or teaching about being with Suzuki. Della and Betty would come to Sokoji for meditation and chanting in the morning before going off to work. The meditation took place upstairs in the temple. Church pews were pushed together to form a sitting platform. That is true. Sitting on zafus in those pews, it would have been hard for them to escape. At first, the men and women sat separately. 4 and 9 days were observed. Men and women sat separately. Oh, well, that continued. That continued. Sitting separately, the men were on one side and the women on the other. That's basically the way it was when I arrived in 66. 4 and 9 days were observed. Yeah, that's weird. I mean, they'd have the weekend, and then they'd have the 4 and 9 days. 4 and 9 days are in a Japanese monastery, well, in Japanese Zen monasteries. Well, at least the ones, the Soto Zen ones. I don't know how far this practice extends. Those are the days, we call them days off, but they're not. They're reduced schedule days where the monks can do their laundry and take care of some private stuff and have a reduced schedule. So there'd be no zazen at Sokoji on 4 and 9 days. And people were always forgetting and walking up to the building to go to zazen, and you know, the door would be locked. And one day, Oksan called down and said, oh, no zazen today. Sensei died. They were calling him Sensei back then. Sensei or Reverend Suzuki. Sensei died. Can you believe she said that? There's a joke. So it said 4 and 9 days were observed, usually with a Saturday work day and Sunday lecture. Yeah, well, there was a work day on Saturday and there was a lecture on Sunday. Work days would begin with a sitting and silent breakfast, followed by temple cleaning, and service, followed by temple cleaning, sewing zabutons or stuffing zafus, and occasionally painting or resanding the floors. Yep. That happened a little later, you know. On Sundays, Suzuki Roshi would give his lecture in English. Betty Warren recalls, when you heard Suzuki Roshi speak, you knew he was looking right straight into your eyes. Everyone else in the room had the same impression. What was he saying? What he was saying was meant for you. Della also felt at one with him. Quote, the message in Buddhism seemed to be something I already knew. Betty remembered. Suzuki Roshi would toss the teaching right back at you. One student who had been sitting for 5 years told Suzuki Roshi he was having pain, and Suzuki Roshi exclaimed, oh, he said we should embrace the pain because it was our teacher. Della continued, he made you think about things. Suzuki Roshi taught us how to understand human life. When we calm our mind, we return to and find strength in our Buddha nature. We straightened up our minds by sitting straight. Sitting is the most powerful help. Della appreciated this teaching and continued to support Suzuki Roshi, both financially and through her commitment to practice. Quote, there was such a simplicity and directness about Suzuki Roshi. You felt at ease around him. I loved to be with him. Della became Suzuki Roshi's escort, driving him to the Japanese newspaper office or to the airport to pick up dignitaries. She accompanied him to Japanese functions in the community. When Suzuki Oksan arrived, Mrs. Suzuki, Mitsu Suzuki, Della helped introduce her to life in San Francisco. Taking a sip of my tea here. After less than a year of sitting and learning about Zen life and rituals, the group held its first 3-day sesshin over a president's weekend in February of 1960. I think that was a 2-day sesshin. By now, there were many new faces. Della sat with the group and also worked in the kitchen during this sesshin. Bill Kwong fondly remembers Della's innocence and purity when she wanted to take aspirin for the pain of sesshin. Betty Warren recalled that she and Della would sit together during sesshin. All right, I got to find my place again. I had to pause it and burp. That's one thing I'm a little worried about. Reading and drinking tea makes me burp. So I've got to pause it here. I know what I should do. I should reduce this page that I'm reading from and make it where the recording page is right there so I can reach over. All I have to do is be able to hit the pause button. Okay, there we are. Betty Warren recalls that she and Della would sit together during sesshin. She recounted how Suzuki Roshi would always keep them in suspense by varying the length of the sitting periods. He would peek in the door and leave again. He tried to keep us on the edge, not knowing what was happening. One time he said, "So you think you're sitting zazen? Well, you're not." He picked up a stick, went around the room, gave everyone 2 swats on the shoulder, and sat down. That's 2 swats on each shoulder. Della, one time he yelled, "Don't move." I wondered if he was mad at us. Suzuki Roshi impressed upon us that faith and meditation go together. I loved the sesshin lectures. On the last day of sesshin, Suzuki Roshi told us we were making the vow to keep the enlightened life. It takes a long time to master meditation, and then we don't know when. Now we must make our zazen more beautiful. As we practice, we will be refined. The following year, Della's husband died after a long struggle with Parkinson's disease. She was grateful for the support and strength she received from Zazen. She continued teaching primary grades. See, I'm going to pause it here because there's a plane coming over. She continued teaching primary grades and taking classes. In 1962, she joined the first group of Westerners to be ordained by Suzuki Roshi. Her name is Zendote Jundoshi, means Zen-way, faith, refined naturalness. As more and more people became interested in Buddhism and joined Zen Center, Della quietly continued to offer support. She hosted many parties and entertainments for the Japanese congregation, as well as giving baby showers and holiday get-togethers for members of the growing Zen sitting group. Many early students have happy memories of her New Year's Eve parties. Yeah, she did that later, I remember. In the late 60s, Zen Center became more organized. Businesses were developed. Businesses in the late 50s, 60s. Well, there was Tassajara. That's all I can think of. Tassajara was founded, and the sitting community moved to 300 Page Street. Della remained close to Suzuki Roshi. When he became ill, she was there with encouragement and inspiration. She felt close to everyone because they were also on the path. For her, quote, "It was the teaching I needed." That was the message. Oh, here comes another plane. Well, let's listen to it. Might not be too close. We're about 30 minutes from the airport here. There have been times in this, with this COVID-19 virus, I just hardly would hear a plane. They don't all go over here. Okay. It was the teaching I needed. That was the message. You make the best of every situation by accepting it as Buddha's activity. But also to try to understand it is to limit the absolute mindfulness is to limit the absolute. Mindfulness meant being in the present instead of the past or future. The teaching is what you do now. See, she has a nice, direct, simple way of expressing things. Soon after Suzuki Roshi died, Della was invited by Richard Baker to move to Page Street. Soon after, she retired from teaching at the highest teaching level thanks to years of outside study. Yeah, she continued to take classes about teaching. She always took classes. She was taking classes after she retired from teaching. Well, anyway, here, I'll keep reading. Immediately, she volunteered to work in the Zen Center offices, helping with fundraising letters and working with the accreditation committee. She continued to befriend Oksan, assisting her with transportation and attending special tea ceremonies. For many years, she and Betty Warren accompanied Oksan on her yearly trips to Tassajara. Retirement has brought much joy, according to Della. Quote, the nearest thing to the foundation... Oh, this is... do you think this is a typo here? The nearest thing to the foundation of youth? No, it should be the fountain of youth, is continuous learning. Retirement has left her free to continue her studies at Zen Center and at the Center for Learning and Retirement, CLIR, at the UC Berkeley Extension. Yeah, the UC Berkeley Extension just down the street from Page Street Building. Just a few blocks, like 2 blocks or something, except it takes up a whole block. So you have to go to the other end of the block it's on to enter. Around on the other side, yeah. Where was I? Where is it? All right. She has wide interests at CLIR. She has recently taken classes in Dante, the Bible as literature, women in the Bible, current affairs, foreign policy, and Shaw's play reading. Wow. At Zen Center, she is devoted to the study of Abhidharma and the foundations of mindfulness. And there is never enough time for the sutras. That's an interesting sentence. With the loss of her mother in 1986 and the loss of her son to cancer 3 years later, she continues to find strength in the teaching. There's another plane. Wow, that's unusual, like 3 of them pretty close together. She is steadfast, devoted, and never complaining. She has a kind word for everyone and keeps a level head in controversies. Though that's true. She never got involved in any controversy. Although she keeps a low profile, she enjoys the comings and goings of Zen Center members, their romances and children. Although Experiencing arthritic pain in her knees, she continues to sit zazen with the community almost every day. She maintains a positive and supportive attitude and has deep and total commitment. It seems appropriate to bring these qualities home with a closing story. One of Della's good friends and admirers is Pat Phelan, a senior student at Zen Center who now leads a group in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. Della helped Pat with the move from Page Street to Chapel Hill. As a hectic day with the movers drew to a close, Pat took refuge in Della's apartment by warm invitation. When the movers were finished, they came to Della's apartment to give Pat her keys. Della invited them to sit and join her for sherry. They were so impressed by her generous spirit that 2 weeks later, when they arrived in Chapel Hill with their furniture, the same movers asked Pat, "Who was that kind, hospitable person we met? She's been in our minds for 2 weeks. What religion does she practice? We want to practice the same one." Continuing to encourage us by living Buddhism and following the teaching of Suzuki Roshi, she is thankful for that privilege and for everyone's practice. Homage to you, Della. Happy birthday, and thank you for so many years of support. May you have many more. All right. That's nice, huh? I'm going to read an undated letter now that Della wrote. It says, "Dear Michael Winger," so I would think that would be in the 80s, something for the wind bell or, we'll see. "Dear Michael Winger, it was such a dreary day today, no sun for the longest time. I enlivened my spirits by reading old notebooks about the early days. Do you have time to edit this? Oh, yeah. Well, I'm going to read you from her notebook." So she gave Michael her notebook. I've got the whole thing on Qt.com. "Or do you want me to work on it myself? I feel the yous and we's may be confusing, and maybe I strung too many lovely sentences together, or it may sound like it. I'd appreciate your thoughts. And is this something like you wanted? Called you tonight, but no answer. Della." And it says, "In the summer of '59, we began sitting with Suzuki Roshi at Sokochi. I knew then I wanted to make meditation an important part of my life. I knew that because we are not satisfied, we study Buddhism. Suzuki Roshi taught us how to understand human life. When we calm our mind, we resume to our true nature and we find strength in our Buddha nature. We straightened our mind by sitting straight. Sitting is the most powerful help. We make the best of every situation by accepting it as Buddha's activity. What we think is a grave matter. To understand the absolute is to limit it. Mindfulness meant being in the present instead of the past or future. The teaching is what you do now." Now, this was what I just read you was in the article Barbara did. I'm going to keep reading it. It might be some repeats. "Zen as a way of life teaches all the things I wanted to be, genuine, kind, and grateful. The most wonderful thing is that it puts it up to you. There wasn't a lot of telling you what to do. At first I thought I must not be worthy, but then I knew there is no inferiority or superiority in Buddhism. The teaching is in what you do." Yeah, this is repeating, but it's not exactly the same, and it's nice, so I'm going to keep reading. It didn't go on very long. There was such a simplicity and directness about Suzuki Roshi. You felt at ease around him. I loved to be with him. When I could do personal errands for him, I was grateful for the privilege. We all sensed a very warm feeling of being personally liked by Suzuki Roshi. We all seemed close together, and I knew there would be no turning back. I liked the Sesshin lectures. We had our first lay ordination after the September 1962 Sesshin. Suzuki Roshi told us we were making the vow to keep the enlightened life. Now we must make our zazen more beautiful. It takes a long time to master meditation, and then we don't know when. The more we practice, the more we will be refined. To me, the Zen way is faith, refined naturalness. I like my Buddhist name. Zendote Jundaishi. Zen way, faith, refined naturalness. I have gratitude for Suzuki Roshi and the teaching and for all of you. Some special memories. One Sunday, after an Oban service, as I bowed to say goodbye, I said, Oban. Oh yeah, Oban. That's like in August. That's when the spirits come back to visit or something. I forget. It's a big deal in Japan. One Sunday, after an Oban service, as I bowed to say goodbye, Suzuki Roshi asked me to wait. He asked me to take him to see the movie The Buddha, so I took 3 robed priests, Bishop Yamada, Reverend Katagiri, Suzuki Roshi, to the then stage door to see The Buddha. I don't think it entirely pleased them, but how could the life of the Buddha ever be told in a movie? I wonder what movie that was. On the 4th of July evening, he asked me to take Oksan and him to see the fireworks at the Marina Green. It was so foggy we couldn't see anything, so we didn't stay too long. I asked Suzuki Roshi what he was going to do on Thanksgiving. He said, "Come to your house." But I was having all my relatives, and they never quite approved of my interest in Buddhism. So I had to tell Suzuki Roshi I was having a big family gathering, and he couldn't come. I've never felt right, though, about saying that to him. Yeah, I can understand that. I met Suzuki Roshi in June 1959. All right, see, that dates it, June 1959, and he arrived May 18th. May 18th is his birthday. Maybe he arrived on the 21st. Anyway, around then. When I met him, when Dr. Kato brought him to our class in Zen Buddhism at the then Academy of Asian Studies, and Alan Watts was the dean at that time. What I remember especially about that evening is that it ended with everyone getting on the floor around the room facing the wall and Suzuki Roshi teaching us to meditate. Betty Warren and Jean Ross were there. Later, we were in the first lay ordination ceremony. Before lay ordination, I explained that I'd had a lot of Christian background, having attended Lutheran school, catechism, and confirmation. I felt with that background, I'd be a Christian Buddhist. He said that was good enough for him. In almost every talk, Suzuki Roshi encouraged us to have faith and confidence in our Buddha nature. This teaching still sustains and encourages me. What was wonderful about Suzuki Roshi is that he thought I was wonderful. Everyone had that same feeling. You felt he was there just for you. He autographed Zen Mind Beginner's Mind with the character Harmony. I said that would be an inspiration for me to have harmony in my life. He said, "You don't have to worry." Such confidence. As I left him, I always went away feeling special for having been in his presence. We love the great ones because they bring out the greatness in us. Suzuki Roshi was a great teacher because he could see the Buddha nature in us. Ah, that's really nice. This might be in something I'll read later about her, and I don't know how long I'll keep going. But somebody asked Suzuki, are there any bodhisattvas alive now? And he said yes. Della. Isn't that great? Okay, I'm going to read you my interview with Della. Well, I have some other things. This is before I had a page for her. So, before I had the link page, I had to take this stuff off and put it there. See. It says, with the most recent, it says January 12th, 2010. Wow, that late, huh? Della has had some strokes, and she and her granddaughter are not so eager for visitors anymore. And then before that, July 6th, 2009, Della is turning 97. Please join us in celebration on Saturday, July 11th, for a tasty brunch and birthday cake at the home of her granddaughter-in-law, Helen Busby. To friends of Della, just saw her. She's living with her granddaughter now in a big, wonderful home with kids running around. She was as sweet as ever. Della's birthday is coming up. Some might have time to drop by, but she'd appreciate a call on that day or any day. She can still remember you, barely. DC. 11/20/08. Della Goertz's notebook. I just have a note on that. Never mind. I had trouble getting that notebook right. I had help. I can't remember who helped me. Maybe Peter Ford, probably. It's been a while getting it looking right. Oh, I remember. Maybe Richard Baker gave it to me at Crestone. And then I copied it in Boulder at the Briar Rose, which is now their Zindo there in Boulder. And the guy who copied it, he did a couple of things sort of weird, so I had to deal with them. And I didn't know how to do that stuff so well then. It wouldn't be much problem now. It says October 24th, 1994. 81 years old. A short chat. I'm just quoting her. I'm like all of them. When you met him, you wanted to study with him. I wanted to be with him. The first time I met him was at the American Academy of Asian Studies. That was the first time any of us saw him. I was taking a class, and Kaz was teaching a class. He was the interim priest at Sokochi, waiting for Suzuki to come. Tobase had left, and there was a vacancy for a year until Suzuki got there. I think it was a year and a half. I used to go to the academy to study calligraphy with Tobase. Oh my goodness, see, I'd forgotten about that. I didn't go to Sokochi till Suzuki Roshi invited us, but Ananda had been there before. There were some other people who started sitting with him too. I forget their names. They didn't stick around very long. Betty and Jean and I were the nucleus. Soon, Baker Roshi, Graham, Bill Kwong, Philip Wilson, and you. Well, no, I was much later. I was 66. Baker came in 91, and so did Graham. Graham came like a month before him or something. Bill Kwong came in 59. Philip Wilson came in 60. And I say to her, Della, you started in 59. I started in 66. And she says, gee, we had a long time of growth. Bill came soon. Bob Hintz was our first president. And there was Paul Alexander. Yeah, Paul went way back. Nice guy. He's the guy who rebuilt the organ in Sokoji and sold it. I mean, he didn't sell it for himself. He sold it was sold and ended up in this museum in Nevada City. I wonder if it's still there. The first night we met Suzuki, we wanted to be his students. We liked his gentle manner, and we liked that he was willing to be so practical with us. We got down on the floor and faced the wall that night doing meditation. He talked a little bit about Zazen, but before the night was over, we meditated and we all wanted to join him at Sokoji. He said that he said at 6 in the morning and that we were welcome to join him. We lost a lot of people. I thought it was so nice of you to say that we owe Baker Roshi credit for all he did. I don't know when she's talking about. I remember I gave a talk at Green's that was not well done. Very poor talk on my part because I didn't prepare. Frequently I can just, improvise. I learned from that even if you can improvise like I can a lot, don't depend on it. Prepare something, and then you can have that, and you can read from it or memorize it, and then you can improvise from it. I was off that night. Sort of embarrassed. I'm still embarrassed about it. People said, "Oh, that was good. That was nice." Yeah, I knew it wasn't. Anyway, I thought it was. Yeah, she said that. Well, that's interesting. I've made that point at other. You know what I said at that Greens thing? I just started off the talk by saying, and that was much closer to the time when he left. That talk was in like 1999. Maybe in the summer or something, or no, it could have been before Crooked Cucumber came out. No, I think it was after. All right, anyway, I said, I think we should all, something, I don't know what I said or how I said it, but I know what it was about. It was something like, I'd like to recognize somebody who isn't here tonight, but somebody we wouldn't be here without them. And I don't know if there'd be a Zen Center without him, and that's Richard Baker. Something like that. So I made that point. All right. And she says, we sat upstairs. The Japanese used benches, and during the morning zazen, we turned the benches, which were in rows, to the wall so that we had to climb over and sit down, and had just any old pillows, no zafus at all, round and square, funny pillows. And it got so crowded after a while, and then they started putting mats on the floor, and finally the new people had to sit in the balcony. The Japanese were very accommodating. They just sort of moved downstairs to make room for our zendo. One of the nice things about those early days was that we had celebrations together, and we had wonderful dinners and the women prepared. She's talking about the Japanese congregation and the Caucasian. Well, they weren't all Caucasians, but the Zazen congregation and the Japanese American congregation. I think that's the best way to say it. And we had celebrations together, and we had wonderful dinners that the women prepared. I like the way the Japanese ladies used to sing. I still feel close to Sokoji and go to some of their events, and I send them little contributions. Yeah, you see, it worked when there was just a few Zen students. But, after Tassajara and the hippie thing, and it just started getting overrun, they finally told Suzuki, hey, you got to choose us or them. This is too much. And I sympathize. She says, Baker Roshi gave the best talks ever. I've heard everyone so much. Sometimes I don't go on Saturdays. Betty came from Sausalito, and I was up on Lake Street, and she came by and picked me up at 5:30. One of the nice things was that afterwards he would go in the office and serve us tea and talk to us. He had this little yellow book called Glimpses of Buddhism or something. Sometimes we'd meet in the kitchen or around the little low table in his office. That was a treat. We did that after we'd chanted the Heart Sutra at service. He didn't introduce the service at first. It would have been too much to introduce us to everything all at once. Later on, Tatsugami taught us more rituals. Haha, that's true. Now, she wasn't at Tassajara for those practice periods. She never went to a practice period at Tassajara. She was a little old by that time. And, it just wasn't her trip. She had a very steady practice and, continued living right next door to the Zen Center at 340 Page. Tatsugami did teach us more rituals. And I said, when I came in 66, we just did the Heart Sutra. Yeah, we did it 3 times. I think that the Daihi Shin Durani was the first one that was added later at Tassajara, and then the Sandokai and the Mule Chant. Listen, chanting the Heart Sutra 3 times in Japanese, it's not regular Japanese, it's the Sino-Japanese for in other words, the Japanized Chinese. So it was, and the Chinese is short. Each character is like 1 or 2 syllables, and it doesn't have it's not like reading in Japanese. It's great for chanting, and that's the most dynamic chanting I ever experienced. Was at Zen Center back there when we did that, and we started at Tassajara doing that too. But then we got all this other stuff, and really we lost that. And it was like being on a freight train to me, just charging ahead. It would get a little faster every time. It was great. But that was them. And then she says, a lot of people said at first that they couldn't understand Suzuki, but I could, and when they got used to him, they could understand him. He showed faith in us. I liked him because I knew he liked us a lot, and he was so friendly. He called me up to take him to the Japanese newspaper after I got home from school, and I went to the airport to pick up Japanese priests that visited. He depended on some of us to do things for him. Gene Ross looked forward to going to Japan. We had lunches with him, but when Hokusan came, we didn't have them so much. And after more and more people came, and we had to share him. No, it doesn't say and after. It just says, and more people came, and we had to share him. One American woman started to look after him, and people thought Mrs. Suzuki better come because she was hanging around a little too much, and it was causing gossip, especially with the Japanese congregation. She did his laundry and cooked for him. But I think that some Japanese ladies did that too. Sometimes I'd cook food and bring it to him. I remember she went and bought him some long underwear because it was cold. She did personal things like that for him. Incidentally, he loved the long underwear, and he continued wearing long underwear when it was cold with his robes and everything. He loved it. I remember she went, oh no, I already did that. She did personal things like that for him, and they said that Mrs. Suzuki ought to come because somebody else was trying to take care of him too well. I don't know her name anymore. Her name's in Crooked Cucumber, but it doesn't matter. She was a little weird, sort of pushy. She was over 20. I don't know. She wanted to help him a lot, mother him and take care of him. She was more interested in that than in teaching because we didn't see her so much studying with us. She just hung around as a sort of social thing. There was some jealousy. You know, I said her name's in Crooked Cucumber. Listen, I've just read, I've been reading, you know, Crooked Cucumber, these podcasts, but I've been reading other things too for these podcasts with people, and I go in and read from their interviews and stuff. So anyway, I've got her name somewhere. I think it's in Crooked Cucumber. But anyway, we like to be there with him. He'd cook for us. He used to make this wonderful, simple dish. Oh, and let's go back to that young woman who was taking care of him. As soon as Oksan arrived, Mrs. Suzuki arrived, that woman disappeared. She went to India, I believe. So he'd cook for us. He used to make this wonderful, simple dish with fried tofu with grated ginger and soy on it. I make it still, and I always think of him doing it when I do. He was my dearest friend. I'll tell you something else that Suzuki would do. He'd put sugar in it. Really, he'd put sugar in miso soup. Yeah. We didn't. You wonder why he had false teeth. We didn't have afternoon zazen then. By afternoon, she means the 5 o'clock zazen. We had 4 and 9 days off. And there were days he wasn't feeling well and the place would be locked and he'd stick out his head and say, "Go home." It took me a while to get used to the rituals, but I liked the meditation. It reminded me of prayer work. I was raised as a Lutheran, and it was kind of hard for me to be a Buddhist at first, and I told him that, and he said that was all right with him. When we were going to get our raksus, a small cloth garment signifying ordination, I said, "Well, I guess I'm a Christian Buddhist," and he said, "Well, that's all right." Well, he married a Christian. Well, Mitsu was Christian. I say that. Well, he married a Christian. "Tell me something about your past," I say. She says, "I came from around Stockton and came to the Bay Area around the 30s and went to college here, and I taught 2nd and 3rd grade. I like that age a lot. They want to learn. I kept taking classes and got higher degrees to get higher grades and took a semantics class with Hayakawa at San Francisco State, and I got interested in Buddhism through some of the things I learned from him, like nonverbal communication. And then I had a chance to take the classes on Buddhism at the American Academy of Asian Studies. I thought I'd like to study there. S.I. Hayakawa, incidentally, who she mentioned, was a very famous linguist. And he went on to become a Republican California senator. And he was a character. And he was a bit of a right-winger, but not like today's right-wingers, more like a moderate Democrat. But Republicans back then were like today's moderate Democrats. I remember one of my favorite quotes from Hayakawa. There was this whole thing about this argument. I think Jimmy Carter wanted to give, I believe I got this right, Panama back to the Panamanians. Well, we didn't have the whole thing, but we had the canal zone. And it was part of, it was U.S. territory, canal zone. And Hayakawa was against it, and the great quote from him was, "We stole it fair and square." Yeah, he was interesting. He was a character. All right, back to Betty. So the AAS, American Academy of Asian Studies, that's what got me started, and I studied flower arranging with a Japanese lady in Japantown. Alan Watts was around, the AAS, and Claude Dallenberg back then. Yeah, before Suzuki came. I think he went to Japan or something in the first year Suzuki was here. Dr. Spielberg, there it is, Dr. Spiegelberg. She says, oh yeah, well, Alan Watts was there and Ananda was the caretaker. So, yeah. And Dr. Spiegelberg, who was the founder of it, who I associate with like a little further south, like San Jose State or something. I don't know. Stanford? Maybe Stanford. And Dr. Chowdhury, who started the San Francisco ashram, and the Fung brothers, who taught the Six Patriarch Sutra. Listen, the AAAS was really something. And as I mentioned earlier, it went on to become the California Institute of Integral Studies. Gene Ross doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with us anymore, and I'm sorry, because we were so close. And we wrote even after she went away, but that all stopped. I heard that she felt her group was being taken away from her in Carmel. Yeah, different priests like Suzuki and Katagiri would help her, but then Katagiri started a group in Monterey, and she left. Though maybe it's because her mother wasn't so well and she was getting too old to live alone. That's what she told us. She was our great one who went to Eheji and got it from the heart. All those monks, and she got Katagiri to come. He was already helping the foreign students at Eheji, and he got close with her. Everybody wanted to go to Japan right away, but Suzuki tried to discourage us from doing that. He said we could study here. I think we're lucky to have had him, and I'm very happy about it. He taught that we have it already, and we can't get it from anywhere but ourselves, and have to have faith in ourselves. I've got to go to my foreign affairs class now. All right, that's my interview with Della. Somewhere in here, maybe in her notebook, it says, I ask her what she learned from Suzuki, and she says, be yourself. And you know the great quote, I'm working on this book, Tassara Stories. I know the quote I want to use for the epigraph, if I ever actually do it, is from Oscar Wilde, be yourself, everyone else is taken. Down here on the March 6th, 2012, 30612. That's March 6th, 2012. Dear Dharma friends, we are planning a memorial service for Della Goertz on Friday, March 16th at 6 p.m. in the Buddha Hall at the City Center. I hope you will be able to come if you would like to. You are also welcome to stay for dinner. If you plan on having dinner that evening, please call the front office. The numbers let us know. Please let anyone know you think might be interested, directors, blah, blah, blah. That's from Rosalie Curtis, who was the, I don't know, it says City Center head of practice. And here's a post I made on February 10th. 2012. Just learned that on Sunday, February 5th, our dear friend and Dharma sister Della Goertz passed away peacefully at the small residential nursing home in Napa, California, where she's been living for the last few years. She would have been 100 this coming July. Then Helen Goertz Busby, the granddaughter of Della, wrote, Our dear sweet grandmother, great-grandmother, passed away last Sunday night at 10 p.m. peacefully. Della was 99 and a half years old and lived a rich, fulfilling life filled with love for all living things. She passed gently, knowing her family loved her very much and ready to embrace her life beyond death. Della's wishes were to be interned with her husband and son together at one time. This will take place at a private family service in Napa. Here's another post I visited Della, incidentally. I visited Della in the city. Whenever I was there, I would go see her. And, when she got old, people in Zen Center get busy. They tended to forget about her. Who was sort of the person there taking care of her? God, she told me once. I know who it is. She's in the Institute for Historical Studies, like me. Can't think of the name right now. 108.52. All right. If I think of it, I'll go stick it in there. 108.52. Basha. Basha. Anyway, she told me once that I visited Della more than anybody. And that made me feel a little sad because I was living up in Marin County or Sonoma County at the time. I was probably in Sonoma County at that time. Anyway, and then when she went to a nursing home in Napa, I would try to see her once a month, once every 2 months, sometimes once every 3 months. And it was always very sweet. And she got where she would ask me, when she got in, at some point she would start asking me the same things, and she would forget people had died and ask me about them. And she was so sweet. And I created a little thing there. I visited her. I visited Betty Warren. I was visiting Lolly Rossett. I was visiting. I lived near Grand Petchy. I started staying in touch with all these older people, and I put a whole thing on it. It's on Cuke.com called the Zen Illuminati. Visiting the older or ill people or whatever who've sort of lost touch, I wrote a letter to the board, maybe to the elders committee. I sent a letter to the elders committee about it, how it ought to be a practice at Zen Center. And especially Ananda, say Claude Dallenberg. I went and read to him once a week for years in this city. I really encouraged other people to go do it. Now Claude was difficult. He'd run people off. In fact, he ran just about everybody off but me. And he got pretty cranky and difficult. But I stuck with him. And God read through a lot of books with him. Gee, I'll tell you. But, I'd talk to people. I'd talk to abbots. I'd talk to board members. And the board members always said the same thing. I said there ought to be an alumni group, and I'll do this and that. And they'd go, yeah, we can get money for the alumni. That's a good fundraising idea. That's the only response I ever got, I swear. And, from even senior people at Zen Center, I'd hear, well, Claude's real cranky, blah, blah. I said, it doesn't matter. It has nothing to do. Think of it like one of your parents. It does not matter. how pleasant or unpleasant that relationship is. It should be our it should be a practice. It should be a duty. You do it if you want to or not. I know I sure did. Anyway, so I promoted that Zen Illuminati thing, and I'm promoting it right now. And let me tell you, there's plenty of times I have neglected people and not done it. And I have lots of regrets for people I didn't see enough of. But anyway, we do our best, huh? So you get the idea. I think that's important. Here's another letter from Helen Busby. This is earlier. This is on July 9th. She's just saying her 99th birthday is coming up and want as many people as possible to wish her well. I can't care for her anymore at home, so she's going to, she's going back to the nursing home. I was visiting her in some sort of home, retirement home, before she went to Helen's house. And I write, happy birthday, Della Goertz. Visited with Della at a residential, happy 99th birthday, Della Goertz. Visited with Della at a residential home in Napa yesterday. She feels fine and only has a smidgen of short-term memory left, but she loved having me go over names from people in the past: Betty Warren, Ananda Claude Dallenberg, Jean Ross, Bill and Laura Kwong, Philip and J.J. Wilson. She asked a couple of times if I was Philip, Graham Petchy, Richard Baker, Mel Weitzman, and from the more recent past, Barbara and Michael Winger, Jana Draka, Blanche and Lou Hartman, and others. Maybe it was Jana. Maybe it wasn't Basha. Maybe it was Jana that was taken care of in the city. Yeah. I'll tell you another thing I think. Even if a person totally loses their memory, they don't know who you are, I think it's still good to visit them. And I think it's good to visit people in comas. I've done that. And, if I have talked to people who were in comas when they came out of it, like Lou Richmond, who were listening to stuff people were saying and were irritated as heck. And I have sat by people who were in comas and expected to die and tried to communicate with them and said, hey, stick with us. Come on. A lot of people want you to be here, whatever. Just a little. I mean, there's some people that have really done a lot of that. I've just done a little, but so here's the notice to the Zen Center. Della Goertz died on February 5th, 2012. Della, mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother was 99. No, she was 99 and a half. She was one of Suzuki Roshi's early students. Oh, I already read that. Pardon me. I'm going to read you from one other thing. Della Goertz's notebook. And this is going to get into some new territory. All right, I'm opening it now. It's a PDF, and I'm just reading it online. I'm opening it online. There it goes. Boy, a lot of work went into getting this thing ready, I'll tell you. Here we are. Oh, wow. Sensei, Grace Cathedral, 68, 5/20/68. Zen is almost impossible to convey except through practice. In our practice, we try not to understand anything. Although you may have some image in your mind, we try not to be concerned with it. In your practice of Zen, Although you see nothing, yet you will see everything. And then she writes, my notes, try not to understand anything. Let it come, let it go. Zen, a basic attitude in which you are ready to think and act. Bring attention back to physical something. This is handwritten stuff. Then on the right side there, include all things in your meditation. Then everything comes to help us and our enlightenment. We practice to experience our non-being, our non-self. Everything is nature. Everything is a koan. She has Kenjo koan. Genjo koan. Everything has Buddha nature. Everything is a koan. Well, that's not the Genjo koan. The Genjo koan, maybe she got that from some talk he was talking about Genjo koan. But that Genjo koan is sort of like, my understanding is, if I'm already enlightened, why do I have to practice? Well, that's not my burning question. I just say, well, it's because I'm not aware that I'm already enlightened. All right. Then, all right, here's how we understand our everyday life as a koan. Suzuki spoke on koans for years. We didn't practice koans, but he gave lecture after lecture on koans. He went through the whole Blue Cliff records. All right, more of her. We have koan of no self nature, koan beyond being and non-being. Buddha's way is beyond being and non-being. She just had B period way. Everything does not go as we want. Start our koan from the experience of life. Flowers die with our attachment and weeds grow with our detachment. Yeah, that's sort of Dogen. That's a Dogen paraphrase. We practice to experience non-being, non-self. Our mind should be wide open when you sit. Include all things. Everything comes to your enlightenment and helps us. Your practice is within yourself. Water is Buddha nature. Water waves are waves everyday life. Water always has waves, so it's impossible to stop it. No water is completely calm. Only in life and death is nirvana. Only in wave is water. Have mind which includes all your activity, everyday life as part of your being. Enlightenment life can't be separated from what you really are. All one continuum. Whatever happens, your mind is stable. That is everyday mind calmness. You must have calmness in movement in everyday life. To be like a driftwood is not our way. And she's got a question mark. To be prepared for anything is to have big mind, always involved, good or bad, in everyday life. That is too much. Big speech without tongue. When we practice, we are in sea where no good and bad is. Sorry, I didn't get that. When we practice, we are where no good and bad is. Where no good and bad is reached. Reached is on the next page. She said, our way, two ways. One, upward. Two, downward. Upward to improve self, have enlightened. Downward, try to forget what you acquired. That's good. Likely to attach to result of practice. Even if you are not helping, you think you are helping. You aren't helping in the true sense because you do not have enough knowledge. You may be forcing help on others. Put emptiness in the way upward, but help others in its true sense, true practice way, upward and downwards, to help self and to help others. And she keeps writing, Kenjo Kohan, world we live in, Kengen, world we live in, koan practice on waking on reality we face, on problems we face. Start our koan from the experience of life. Everything does not go as we wish. Flowers die with our attachment, weeds grow with our detachment. Listen, this goes on and on. This is a long notebook, and it's on cuke.com. So I'm just looking at page after page. You know, Richard Baker gave me this. I know why I copied it in Boulder, because I left it there for him to keep. He gave it to me to take to Boulder. We were at Crestone. I guess they didn't have a copy machine, or there wasn't time. You know, he said, copy it in Boulder and leave it there for me with my stuff or whatever. Nice of him, huh? Listen, he spent several days going through. He had this whole building of stuff of his with boxes of papers. He spent a few days going through boxes and giving me stuff he found. He found a couple of lectures. He was great. All right, I'm just going to stop on a random page here. See everything with considerate feeling, true religious practice. Great underlying principle is truth of the self. To become straightforward is to have nothing to show. If you practice, it will bring marvelous results to you. Are you all right? Sure, true self always answers. Mind not in one place, but in your whole body. Stop thought by posture. Conscious mind has no place. When you are involved in thinking, good or bad, that's not good. Harmonize with all beings. To accept our life means not to complain. Wow, it's just page after page of stuff. All right, here's one. Disease will not destroy you, but not to sit will destroy you. Well, he's not talking about the body there. I'm just going through all these pages. Wow, I forgot how long this is. Anyway, I think I should stop here. That's a great deal about Della Goertz, and it's been my pleasure to visit you, Della, and to share your compassion and your wisdom and your practice, and just what a sweet, good person you were. And so I will bring this podcast to a conclusion. As I said before, this is the first podcast, the only podcast I have done where I am not going to go over it. And let me tell you, if I went over this podcast right now, we're at almost at an hour and a half. I would spend 3 or 4 hours going over it, getting it ready, and I'm very happy not to do that. I've gotten a little exhausted from doing all this and all the other stuff with the websites and everything, and I'm very happy to know what to do with my time. But it's actually not that I want to take it easy. There's other stuff I want to do. There's other stuff with the Cuke archives I want to do. And so we'll be seeing you later in other podcasts and on Cuke What's New blog, where I post 6 days a week, Shunryu Suzuki lecture excerpt, and almost always something else relevant. And then on the Cuke Nonsense blog, other stuff, nonsense, right? And, okay. So this has been a Cuke audio podcast, and I'm your host, DC, coming to you from sleepy Sonora with Doga Bandita Feline Cuchita and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours a grand awakening.